She brought a homemade pie to Christmas dinner, but they handed her a folding chair and then kicked her out. No one knew she was worth $10 million. No one knew she'd been silently building an empire. This is the true story of Evelyn Whitmore, the disgrace of a perfect family, who vanished only to return as the one name they'd all come to need. Would you forgive your family? Or disappear like she did? Tell us what you would have done. I brought a handmade apple pie. They brought sharpened smiles and no seat for me. Snow clung to the hem of my coat as I stepped into the Whitmore estate, the scent of cedar garlands and mulled wine hanging in the air like a trap disguised as comfort. The dining room shimmered in soft candlelight and crystal gold-trimmed plates glinting beneath polished chandeliers. Every corner of this house whispered curated elegance, and none of it belonged to me. I balanced the still warm pie in both hands, careful not to drop it, though my fingers were already trembling. The laughter around the table didn't pause. No one looked up. Charlotte raised an eyebrow first. "You made that?" "Yes," I said, setting the pie down beside a silver platter of imported truffles. "Apple. From scratch." There was a beat. Henry smirked. "That's cute," he said. "Did you sell that to your followers, too?" "What is it you do again?" "NFTs or some other internet pyramid scheme?" I forced a breath through my nose. "Digital art, installations, galleries." "Right," he said, turning to pour himself a drink. "A digital sketch hustler. Makes sense." The pie steamed, ignored. I glanced toward the head of the table. My father raised his wine glass but didn't look at me. My mother met my eyes cool, calculating, and then turned away. "Where should I sit?" I asked quietly. There was no empty chair. Not one. "Oh," said my mother with a sudden bright smile. Of course. She disappeared down the hallway, heels clicking like punctuation marks. When she returned, she was dragging a metal folding chair. It screeched as she placed it between the sideboard and the doorway, half a step behind the others. I stared at it. "You don't have to sit if you're uncomfortable," she offered, voice silk-wrapped venom. "Thanks," I said, taking the chair. It wobbled slightly. Conversations resumed without me. Charlotte was recounting a high-profile case involving a corrupt hedge fund. Henry was telling a story about filming a surgery for an online medical show. A cousin was showing off photos of her third child's violin recital. No one asked me a question. I reached for a dinner roll. My hand grazed the serving spoon. Henry flinched as if I'd sneezed into the caviar. "I saw your little video," Charlotte said, suddenly cutting into her fillet. "The one with all the paint and screaming music? Very brave." "It was a silent piece," I said. She laughed, tossing her napkin onto her lap like she was swatting away a gnat. "Exactly." I took a sip of water, ignoring the taste of iron in my mouth. My mother stood. The table hushed. She held her wine glass aloft. "Before dessert, I have something to say." I straightened. "Christmas is about family." She began, voice smooth as ever. "But family doesn't mean enabling weakness. It doesn't mean pretending failure is art. We've all tried, Evelyn. We've all waited. But this charade, this fantasy you live in, it has no place here." I blinked. No one interrupted her. Charlotte looked away, pretending to fix her lipstick. Henry sipped his wine. Even my father stared at his plate. My mother's gaze was razor sharp. "You need to leave." Silence. Even the chandelier seemed to stop its subtle sway. "Victoria," I heard myself say. I didn't call her Mom. Why now? She tilted her head. "Because you don't belong here. You never did." Charlotte leaned forward, resting her chin on her hand. "You're 29, Evelyn," she said, still chasing daydreams and self-validation. "You don't even own a house. We're all professionals here. You're a liability." Henry snorted. "Didn't she drop out of RISD or something I left to build my own studio?" I said. "Exactly." Charlotte said, her voice edged with pity. "You chose obscurity." I looked around. No hand reached out. No eye softened. No seat was offered. My father finally spoke. "Let's not turn this into a scene. Just go." I stood. Slowly, deliberately. The chair screeched again as I pushed it back. Understood, I said. I took my coat from the stand, buttoned it one clasp at a time, and lifted my pie from the table. I walked toward the front door without another word. The snow had thickened. Wind blew against my cheeks as I stepped outside. I didn't look back. The door clicked shut behind me. My phone buzzed. Art Tech Inc. Year-end net profit 3.2. No family photos in my home. I've learned that blank walls hurt less than false memories. The city below shimmered with holiday lights, ribbons of gold and red tangled across empty avenues and frosted window panes. But up here, 18 floors above noise and nostalgia, my penthouse hummed in low silence, the kind that didn't need to be filled. I moved barefoot across the smooth slate tiles, the only sound the soft hiss of the wine as I poured it into a crystal glass. The scent of clove and cinnamon drifted in from the diffuser near the kitchen. Somewhere behind me, the soft screen glow flickered across the steel-framed windows. My world was clean, ordered. Not a single frame on the walls. No dusty heirlooms, no stiff portraits of people who saw my absence as more presentable than my company. A single voice command lit up the dashboard on the central screen. Portfolio summary, I said. The numbers blinked to life. Art Tech Inc. Q4 revenue. 3.2 in its an NFT gallery. Evelyn, sold out collection to Tokyo, patron $4. 2M trusts and grants, 1.7 mirror deployed to underrepresented artists, total assets, 10.6 mirrors, a ping. Another transaction finalized. The fund I'd quietly built for queer creatives in rural areas just sent a year-end stipend to a young sculptor in Arkansas. I took a slow sip. The last time I cried was when I couldn't afford heat in my apartment 5 winters ago. Tonight, I pressed deactivate on my family's credit access. The system acknowledged it with a pleasant chime. Automatic Whitmore account subsidies terminated. Charlotte's corporate card revoked. Henry's wellness reimbursement plan expired. Victoria's monthly foundation consulting fee ceased. I closed the window with a flick of my hand. The walls were quiet, but not dead. They held my work-textured canvases, coated layers of digital rebellion, AR-powered installations waiting to be activated. Every piece had been created when I felt invisible. Every line was proof that I'd survived without them. In the corner, a small light pulsed. Ava. Are you coming to the ribbon cutting tomorrow? I smiled. Ava had been living in her car when one of our outreach counselors found her an artist with hunger in her eyes and soot on her hands. She didn't know I was the one who paid for her scholarship or the laptop she now used to design textile prints. Still staring at the screen, I pulled up another folder. Confidential support grants. The list was long. Single mothers, immigrant poets, disabled veterans. And one familiar name, Lena Woods. Her file opened with a photo. Cropped headshot. Brown curls, slight smile eyes that held a quiet defiance. Lena had worked at Charlotte's firm. According to a whistleblower document, she was fired after refusing to falsify billing records for a high-profile case. No severance. No references. I had found the memo 6 months ago. She never knew where the $30,000 came from. She only knew it cleared the liens on her home and funded a new start in Portland. Her last grant check was signed simply a Loon Initiative. The irony, Charlotte preaching justice while punishing the very people who embodied it. Typical Whitmore hypocrisy, golden plaques, rotten foundations. My eyes narrowed as I opened the admin panel for the Whitmore Legacy Fund. Victoria still had access. Of course. She once told me legacy is built on control, not kindness. Let's see what she builds with neither. I hovered over her account profile, then clicked Delete Access. System prompt. Are you sure? Yes. Then I changed the name of the fund. Whitmore Legacy Fund. Evelyn Future Trust. New description, a quiet force for artists building futures with dignity, not permission. As I pressed save, the cursor blinked twice and then it was done. No confetti. No gavel strike. Just silence, clean and whole. I leaned back into the chair glass, still in hand. From my penthouse, the river shimmered like liquid steel beneath the moon. They think I'm gone. I whispered to no one, but I'm just beginning. They used to ignore my name. Now it's the only one not on the investigation list. 3 days had passed. Just 3. That was all it took for the gilded legacy of the Whitmores to develop hairline cracks that spiderwebbed into headlines. I sipped espresso from a double-walled glass, watching the Zoom waiting room flicker on my screen. Each name appeared in bold font, hovering like ghosts of an empire that used to condescend to me across linen-covered dining tables. IRS audit. Whitmore Family Trust. Join meeting. Victoria Whitmore. Charlotte Whitmore. Henry Whitmore. Theodore Whitmore. Legal counsel Benjamin Reese. I clicked join without ceremony. The screen blinked and I was in. Their faces appeared in quick succession. Charlotte looked hollowed out, all contour and no foundation. Henry had aged overnight, his usual bravado replaced with darting glances and a tight jaw. My mother's expression was unreadable, poised, cold, desperate. And my father, Theodore, wore a look that belonged more in boardrooms than family matters, irritated dominance. Evelyn Victoria said first, nodding with an edge of formality she used on strangers. "Good morning," I said back, straight voice even. My background was clean white walls, soft lighting, no distractions. No proof of success. No need for it. Benjamin Reese, their lawyer, cleared his throat. "Ms. Whitmore, thank you for joining. As you may have heard, the IRS has initiated a formal review of the Whitmore Foundation's financial history, particularly in regard to internal grants and undocumented distributions." He glanced at Victoria. "We are hoping you can help us clarify a few things." "Of course," I said, smiling faintly. "But just to be clear, I'm no longer affiliated with the Whitmore Foundation." Henry leaned in. "That's the point, Eve. You're not on the filings they're flagging. Your records are clean." Charlotte jumped in. "We need to show cooperation and alignment. If you could, I don't know, make a statement confirming you've always had full knowledge and consent." "I didn't," I said simply. Charlotte blinked. "What?" I tapped the screen and a PDF opened in shared view, a financial summary, line by line, every dollar I had transferred anonymously, time-stamped, clean, traceable. "This," I said, "is the extent of my involvement. I built my own trust. Every transfer was legal, disclosed to the IRS, and has nothing to do with your accounts." Victoria frowned. "You used the family's name, I used the word Evelyn," I corrected. "The only name I ever needed was my own." Benjamin raised a hand. "We're not accusing you of wrongdoing. On the contrary, your financial hygiene is refreshing. But your separation creates optics. If we don't present unity, the authorities may interpret this as deliberate obstruction within the family." My silence, I said, was never compliance. It was preparation. The screen went quiet. "I need something from you," I added. "Signed releases, each of you. You will make no claim to my trusts, my assets, or future business ventures. Not now. Not ever." Henry scoffed. "You're serious?" I looked at him directly. "Do I seem whimsical?" Victoria narrowed her eyes. "You're punishing us?" "No," I said. "This isn't revenge. This is accounting." Charlotte stood up from her chair, only visible from the waist up her blouse, creased in a way it never would have been 3 days ago. "You think this makes you better than us? I don't think about you at all?" I said. Theodore leaned forward. "You ungrateful," I clicked leave meeting. The call ended mid-yell. A notification rose gently in the bottom corner of my screen. Art Haven launch event confirmed. Jan 18th. They only remembered my number when theirs stopped working. The snow had settled like quiet breath across the city. From the penthouse windows, Boston's skyline looked almost apologetic. Frosted roofs, vacant streets, the Charles River moving like slow mercury. I stirred honey into my tea and let the steam warm my hands. The phone buzzed again. Voicemail from Victoria. I didn't press play, but I read the preview. "I think it's time we talk." The tone was softer now. Almost maternal. Almost. I placed the phone screen down. The next one came from Charlotte, shorter clipped, less apology and more accusation. "You've made your point, Evelyn. Enough damage has been done. Call me." And then Henry's number popped up. I declined the call before the first ring ended. Years ago, I wired them lifelines. Today, I'm handing them the scissors. By the time I stepped outside, the morning snow had thinned into a silvery sleet. The car took me across the bridge toward South End, past the construction zone where Art Haven's signage now stood proud and irreversible. Soon, 100 kids who'd never stepped into a gallery would have a place to learn and create without needing pedigree last names or pristine family dinners. Lena's center was tucked behind a courthouse annex, functional no frills like her. Inside, the heating hissed softly as she scribbled something across a whiteboard, legal clauses, nonprofit shields, a wall of protection built from paper and precedent. She turned when she heard the door. "Didn't think you'd actually come downtown?" she said with a half smile. "Didn't think you'd still have your coat on inside." She rolled her eyes and peeled off the puffer jacket. Old habits. I crossed the room slowly, eyes scanning the pinned affidavits, the anonymous testimony from former Whitmore Foundation employees. Lena had been working quietly, fiercely since the moment I sent her that first anonymous check. She handed me a folder without preamble. Charlotte's people reached out. What did they say? Nothing directly actionable, just veiled questions. What's your interest in Evelyn? Do you have plans for press involvement? One even asked if I was willing to preserve family dignity in the wake of restructuring. My face didn't move, but something behind my sternum curled cold. I assume that's code for shut up, I said. Lena nodded. They're worried. They should be, I added. Everything's been transferred now. Final wires confirmed this morning. Every trust with the Whitmore name is under a Loon Future Fund. She raised an eyebrow. You sure you don't want your name on any of it? They only cared about who I was when they thought I could be useful. That's not legacy. It's leverage. And I'm done being a currency. We stood there a moment, letting the silence thicken. No courtroom declarations, no press releases. Just two women in a room filled with names that used to mean something. I sat on the edge of the desk. Ava's almost finished her first portfolio. She's scared, but she's good. I want her to cut the ribbon at Art Haven. Lena smiled. She'll freak out. She deserves to. So do you. That was the first time Lena didn't deflect. Instead, she glanced toward the board again. There's a kind of justice in this, she said. We don't need to burn the old house down. We just build better ones next door. I knotted fingers, brushing the polished wood beside me. They never cared about who I was, only what I could provide. Let's make sure no one else gets used like that again. As I stepped back into the elevator and watched the doors close, the phone buzzed again. A push alert. Anonymous patron behind Art Haven identified. My pulse ticked once. Attached a blurry photo. Me, leaving Lena's building. Face turned, but not enough. I watched a crowd cheer for a name they didn't know belonged to me. The ribbon curled like a red echo between two metal poles fluttering faintly in the January wind. 100 people, parents, students, city workers. Young artists stood in semicircles outside the newly painted facade. The sign above the doors read, Art Haven. No tagline, no founder name, just promise. Inside the renovated warehouse buzzed with warmth, string lights looped overhead, the scent of cocoa mingled with paint and sawdust, and laughter bounced off walls that had once been silent. I stayed close to the back near a half-curtained corner where kids were pinning up charcoal sketches and collaged poems. Ava tugged at my sleeve, her eyes wide and bright. You see that one? She pointed toward a mixed-media piece of a girl looking out a cracked window. That's Kamira's. She never showed her stuff before last week. She should, I said. It's honest. Ava tilted her head. That's why she was scared. We walked past easels and paper stations, clay trays and chalkboards scrawled with quotes from local artists. This place didn't hum with prestige. It pulsed with something far rarer permission. At the center of the main floor, Lena adjusted the microphone. She wore her hair down, something she rarely did, and a blue blazer too crisp for the cold warehouse air. Her voice cut cleanly through the space. Tonight isn't just about a ribbon or a plaque, she said. It's about breath. It's about space. It's about what happens when someone says, I see you. And I won't look away. The crowd clapped not out of obligation, but recognition. The person who made this possible has chosen not to speak tonight. She believes the best stories aren't told by donors, but by those who finally get a place to write their own. I lowered my gaze as a few heads turned scanning for a clue. But if she's listening, Lena continued, I just want to say this. You didn't build a building. You built a future. From behind the makeshift stage, the mayor stepped forward next. His speech was more practiced, laced with gratitude and city council metrics. But when he pointed toward the kids, some still dusted in charcoal, one with a sketchbook clutched to her chest, it grounded his words. And to the anonymous founder, he finished Boston, thanks you. Not for what your name could have bought, but for what your silence empowered. The applause swelled. A reporter lingered nearby badge, swinging on a lanyard eyes sharp. She approached with a notebook balanced on her palm like a scale. You're her, aren't you? She asked softly. I smiled, tucking my hands into my coat pockets. I'm just here to support the future. She nodded, scribbled something, and moved on. When the moment came, Ava took the scissors from Lena's hand. Her fingers trembled just slightly as she stepped forward, standing beneath the banner of her own resilience. A hush fell. Then the cut clean, decisive, no second guesses. The crowd erupted. They didn't cheer for power. They didn't cheer for legacy. They cheered because something had been torn open and something far better had emerged. Ava turned toward me as the echoes softened her voice, barely audible beneath the chatter. Will you invite your family to see this? I looked toward the windows, the glow of the streetlights, the horizon beyond, and I shook my head. Slowly, steadily. Her email said, I miss you. My cursor hovered, but I never typed a word. The sky outside dimmed into velvet as the sun sank behind the skyline, casting long amber streaks across the glass. In my office, the piano murmured soft, almost apologetic. I sat with the screen in front of me, its light cold against my skin. The subject line read simply, I'm proud of you. From her, from Victoria Whitmore. I didn't open it right away. I let the notification blink, let it breathe in the air of a home it had never visited. Eventually, I clicked more out of curiosity than hope. The message was brief, no theatrics, no pleas. I saw the papers, the gallery, the center. I was wrong about you. I miss you. There was no apology, just distance wrapped in politeness. I closed the tab. In another window, the dashboard for the Evelyn Future Trust was already open. The numbers meant nothing anymore, commas and decimals where intentions used to be. I clicked through to the governance panel, hovered over the final remaining ties, a shared board observer role, a backdoor grant advisory channel still registered to the Whitmore Foundation's legacy email. Revoke? Revoke? Confirm. A soft tone sounded as the system logged the changes. I leaned back, letting my eyes drift to the painting that hung above the fireplace, one of mine. Years ago, I would have hated seeing it there. Too vulnerable, too loud. Now it felt earned. A knock of digital sound, the soft trill of an incoming FaceTime call, cut through my thoughts. I answered. Ava's face lit up the screen. Her hair was pulled into a loose bun graphite, streaked her wrist, and behind her the new studio hummed with young voices and color. Look, she said, lifting a page toward the camera. It showed a sprawling city made of trees and stars, each building shaped like a letter. She pointed. That one spells future. I checked it 3 times. It's beautiful, I said. And you made it real. She grinned. I'm gonna hang it by the east wall. You know the one with the weird draft? I smiled back. Perfect place for it. We talked a few more minutes about the heating system, the new paints coming in next week, a student named Emile, who wanted to build a mural out of broken mirrors. When the call ended, I sat in the hush she left behind. My inbox was still open. Her name still bolded. I clicked reply. The cursor blinked. My fingers rested on the keys, but I didn't type. Not because I didn't have words, because I had said them already, just not to her. I closed the message. Opened a new document instead. The deed lay ready beside me. My signature looped in ink, Evelyn Mira Whitmore, transferring a Loon Future Trust to full public ownership, retaining only non-voting advisory status. No control, just care. The kind that lives without asking for credit. I turned toward a new canvas. It had been years since I touched a brush for myself, not for a gallery, not for a digital drop. Just to feel again. I mixed the colors slowly. Let the silence guide the first stroke. In my notebook, I wrote just one sentence before the page dried beneath my palm. Chapter 2. Build where love is welcome. The ones who dismissed her name now echo in spaces they no longer own. Evelyn didn't reclaim her seat at the table they watched as she built one where truth was the invitation, not lineage. Justice in her hands arrived not as fury, but as precision legal lasting quiet. When injustice is met with unwavering courage, the final verdict can echo through a lifetime. And sometimes the loudest revenge is peace they can't touch.